to start. Audio still. All right, you guys, we're going to get started. Oh, well, when we get going. Everybody online, just bear with us a second. We're going to get organized here as we get our group ready. And I'm going to give them a few instructions. So hang tight, and we'll be back with you in a second. Hang on. All right, everybody. I'm going to ask a couple things. One, we are live on the interweb, and we're having some audio issues. So actually, our mic tonight is only going to work online, so I have to project to all of you, which sometimes isn't a problem, being loud. But I have two questions. One, I am fully vaccinated. Are you okay if I take my mask off tonight to talk so you can hear me? And then if you're not comfortable, I'll certainly wear it, but if that's okay, I'm going to go that route. And so as we get going, there is, like I said, we do have a group online, and that's for these guys. So unfortunately, a little audio issue. So I'll try and talk loud, but if you can't, and actually then I can see you, actually. That's cool. So if you have any questions, certainly you can ask me as we go throughout, but at the end, we're going to have plenty of time to ask questions, sort of recap some of the things that we've gone through and whatnot. We have a few other folks that are going to be chiming in here. So that's the story. Does anybody have anything before we get going? And everybody online, you have the ability to ask questions. Chris monitoring them. So as that happens, we will answer them at the end as well. So go ahead, start asking away, and we'll go from there. All right. So welcome everybody tonight. And I hope that I'm not going to disappoint too many of you to tell you that a majority of this information is the same that we've had before. But we wanted to have another opportunity to try and do it live to people that don't live in the area. So we have a little bit of more information from when we were here a couple weeks ago. We have some progress. We have some exciting stuff that we can talk about, but it's not earth-shatteringly new. So just wanted to give you a heads up on that. So sustainable Telemark is the future of this property that we're here on. And the concept of sustainable Telemark really is twofold. One, sustainable in the concept of the environment and the things that we think are important to recreate outside in nature. And then sustainable meaning from a business standpoint, so that it's here into perpetuity, that it's going to continue to be here in 20 years, 50 years, 100 years. So the sustainable Telemark thing is really important to us. It's not just about one or the other, but actually the entire project. And so I think I want to thank Alice and Slavic for coming up with that as we really get rolling. But I think it's, especially for those of you that weren't here before, I think it's important to think back about the history of this property. 1948, when really this started to come to fruition, Tony came up with, right, the Telemark company, and this was really birthed out of that, and it really all began. So it's not just something that think about how long ago that was. But then fast forward to 1973, and then he decided to put on this little race that at the time had 35 people. It wasn't that huge. There they all are. And then there was another 19 that started at 00 and thought that they were going to do at that time, which was called the Women and Children's Race. That was the Cordelopet. I don't think we can use that any longer. I think we've passed that. But you think about how far this has come since 1973, and it continued to evolve. I think, Tony, as Telemark evolved, there was some real tenets that this is notes that came back from, sorry, probably can't be seen, huh? I have a tendency to wander. I apologize for you out there. That Tony utilized when he put together this whole Telemark property that I think are still important to us. One of them is the environment. And these are notes that actually Tom Kelly provided to us when he did a presentation 2 years ago this summer at our annual meeting. And as many of you know, Tom was very close to Tony. The environment. Creating jobs was something that was really important to him. So again, being an active part of the community, which for us at the ABSF is really important as well. We feel like it's an important part of the community that we're here. One interesting fact about the Birkie that I think is applicable, if we look at our revenue as an operating organization, our operating budget's about $3.5 million. Nearly 90% of that comes from over 50 miles away. That's just because where the majority of people live, the majority of sponsors are. Over 90% of that gets spent within that 50 miles. It's where the contractors are that we use. It's where the employees are. So we feel really good about being community stewards. And I think Tony that was important to him. Of course, this is near and dear to us, physical fitness. And I think when we look at this project and why we decided to really take a step forward with this was creating a medium for physical fitness, active outdoor lifestyles, not just for elite ski racers, but someplace to go walk your dog and everything in between. But then I thought this was pretty interesting too. In 1982, the idea that it's not just about one organization doing it. This is about a whole community coming together to make it work because we are a small community. Hey, I live in Earl, so I know small communities. But I think the vision here is really to create a medium for outdoor recreation, healthy, active lifestyles, preserve the environment in a way that allows people to go out and enjoy it and make sure that it's here for a really, really long time, and also be a vital part of the community. So putting all those parts together is really why the ABSF said, hey, this site has been sitting here since 2013. It's been idle for 8 years with nothing happening. And we felt like it was important for us to lead the way, but understand as we go through this tonight, what I hope you realize is that we're not hoping to do everything. We want to be the vehicle to get this moving forward. We're going to concentrate on outdoor recreation and working with Landmark to really conserve the environment. But then we really want partners to come in and help do a lot of the other things, whether it's somebody that puts in a hotel, somebody that wants to do a tap room, or there's a live music weekend, all those things that could happen. Those are partnerships. Those are not things that we hold close to our mission, vision, values as the ABSF. So where are we now? I think it's important before we go forward, kind of get you a sense of where we are at this point in time. These are all the events that happen currently on the property. The ABSF puts on 45 events in a year, and a good majority of them actually happen up in this area. So what you realize is this is the centerpiece of us as an organization. We've already invested well over $1.5 million in this facility right here. Between the things behind you, between this building, the start line building, snowmaking, we are really invested in being here. And there's also now this opportunity for a whole lot more events. People that want to come and put on youth mountain bike races and a whole variety of things that we feel like this medium is going to really start to create, as well as, I think, become a really important educational component. One of the things that I think Landmark brings to us as we look at the Conservancy is a whole educational piece around why it's so important to have this property be here for not only 5 years, 50 years, 100 years, forever. This is just an overview of the, and again, I apologize to those of you who are in the far back, but this yellow outlined property is what we're looking at. And actually there's another one that's over here, but really what I want to show with this is the trail density. You see there's a huge amount of trails on here, and you can see there's the old Birkie Classic, the Bill Koch, the World Cup, these dark blue ones here that are snowmaking trails. This one up on top is Birkie Skate. Birkie Classic is down here. There's a bunch of North End trails down in here as well. But you really notice it's a hugely dense population of trails. That's really at the foundation of everything that we plan to do moving forward. Is if you think of our business plan, it's really revolving around creating outdoor recreation opportunities and for people to go out and enjoy nature. And then in turn, partner businesses that feel like they're a good fit for that, they become then a partner in that. We're making snow, and we're going to get to that as well a little bit later. But this venue, we've started some other events like the Turkey Birkie. This next year, we're going to have a super tour here, September 10th and December 10th and 11th. The best skiers in the U.S. are going to be here racing to try and qualify to go to the Olympics, as well as a whole lot of juniors. But that requires having early season snow so that we can actually bring events outside of the time that are somewhat traditional, right? We know there's going to be people here in January and February, but sometimes early December, we don't know. And so that's where investing in things like snowmaking for us are really important. And we can talk more about that. Investing in the infrastructure of events. So how do we get access and stadium and a variety of events? One of the things that we've looked at is also putting in a bid for a World Cup in 2024. The first World Cup ever in 1978 was held right here. So to bring that back, and Jesse Diggins and all the elite athletes back here to where it all started, is something that not only really inspires the Nordic ski world, it brings a lot, I think, to the greater Midwest ski and outdoor community. Where are we now? So now what's going to happen? One of the things that I think as an organization we feel is really important as we continue to move forward. We can't forget the past. That really helps guide us forward. But if we stop, it's like a bike. It just starts to tip over. So we want to remain relevant within the community, relevant within skiers, relevant with people that want to enjoy the outdoors, and make sure that it's going to be here for a really long time. So first and foremost, this is the greater property, over 700 acres of Telemark. These holes that you see in here are privately owned. This is TIOA. That's the Telemark Condominium Association. These right here, there's also Valhalla, which is up in there as well. Over here are the Nordmore private homes. And then, of course, this is the greater Telemark property. So first and foremost was we purchased the property. Closed on it February 8th. As we look at our master plan, this is how we've broken it up as an organization. So first and foremost, we had to acquire the property and we had to remove the building. And we'll talk about more about that in a second. I'll have Jim talk about that. But that was contingent on us buying the property, was that we removed the building within 12 months. We partnered with the city of Cable and were able to get the idle site grant for $250,000. To remove the building is $780,000. So that grant went a long way in getting us started, but we also have to fund the remainder of removing that building, which really allows for a bunch of the progress. So that was step one. And step two, we'll come back to these later on. Step two is really then the things us investing back into those activities first and foremost that are core to us. Mountain bike trails, hiking trails, things that get you outside and active, as well as partnering with Landmark and really coming up with our conservation plan for creating the conservancy on a big part of this property. Because it allows us to not only recreate, but it also creates what we think is a really amazing medium to teach a lot of people about being outside and the important things to us. As well as eventually building a touring center of some sorts. That's not completely defined right now. We're still going through what does that look like. Does it have a little coffee shop in it? Does it have our museum from Hayward in it? Does it have ski rentals that somebody comes up and runs at parts of the year? All sorts of brainstorm ideas right now that are in the process. But that eventually is really core to us, is creating some sort of what we call a gateway that allows people to come in, use a bathroom inside. I mean, we love the porta potties outside, but it's really nice to have an indoor bathroom and then go outside and enjoy the outdoors and come back in. We envision the way this property is going to operate is that all traffic will end up coming through the way it did when 5,000 people used to come to Telemark. This part of the property is really built around events. It's meant to hold lots of people to go do big events and races. The other part of the property is a great medium for touring and going for walks and just the things about being active outside. Mountain bike trails can connect there. Of course, ski trails can connect there, but it's also a place that you can go there all year long versus here, much more centric around having a race. So this is what's core to our activities. Then there's these other things that are possible other investments that likely aren't going to be made by us, but hopefully partners that come in and help us do some of those things. We might say, gosh, we really think we need an observation tower up on the top. Would be super cool. We're going to fundraise for it and get it up there. Or it might be that somebody comes to us and says, hey, we think getting a observation tower would be super cool, and they become a partner of ours. So that's really important to us, is that we focus in on what we're good at and our core activities, and then bring more of those partners in. So I'm going to turn this over to Jim Sokup for a second. He's running all of our relationships with Haas, who's doing the demo, and I think can probably give you the most up-to-date And then we have some pictures too.
Stand on the blue X. That's for these folks or the folks over in. I got it. Okay, so I'm going to take a shot that probably most of you here in the audience tonight have made a pass by Telemark in the last day or two, just probably. For those of you that are here with us virtually, just to let you know, we actually got started with the demolition. They showed up last Friday. They essentially took down enough of the building so that when the road bands came off on Monday, which they did come off on Monday, that they were able to actually start hauling away and getting the process rolling. It was really nice to see, and I know I saw actually Gary out there. These guys are literally pulling a bunch of the lumber that's in the building, setting it aside, stacking it. They're recycling that. They're pulling the metal out. They're recycling that. So they're really doing a nice job. Actually, I'm really happy with the way that it's progressing. Over the course of the last 2 days, I would say, maybe they took about a third of the west wing down. So if that's kind of the formula, you could say 6 days, maybe in that 3-week time frame that we had talked about. We were 3 to 4 weeks, possibly something along those lines. So it's happening. Yeah, there's one of those. So, and I think Joel put those up on Facebook too, so that anybody and everybody can get a look at them and see what's going on. Yeah, there you go. It's actually really interesting. The you can see how the building was built now really clearly when they tear it down, right? It has a separate roof on the top that was added on at one point in time, and you can if you look at sort of the gray section on the sidewall, those are the separate rooms. When they set it all, they set one piece, they set another piece, and so you can really get a look at how the thing was put together now anyway. We have a question for Mr. Chode in the back. No, they're not. The answer is no. They're going to take this down, and they're going to take the height down. Those are the two jobs that they have. All the ski lift equipment is still going to be in place. No, not so much for this part. You want to take some questions? Do we have some questions?
We'll come back to them.
Okay.
Okay, I just wanted to come back to this for a second, because that's the first part. So that's what we're in the middle of doing right now is removing that building and then starting to move on to the second part of us investing back in those outdoor recreation pieces that we talked about. We have had a timber survey done of the property. Boy, this was actually a while back. Better look on the blue X, sorry. This was done a while back just to give a sense of what was out there. And it's obviously something that's going to get much more in depth now as we start to look at putting more and part of this into Conservancy with Landmark. But that is going to bring me to, this is when we did a survey, and I think many of you took it, just starting to garner information back about what people think of the property, how they might want to use it, where are they coming from, etc. So of 2,600 respondents, 90% that did it had done an ABSF event. 28% had volunteered. 73% live greater than 100 miles away. These are all the things that they would love to have in a recreation, in a destination. They loved, number one, of course, was cross-country ski trails. Number 2 was hiking trails. Number 3 was mountain bike trails. Number 4 was running trails. 5 was snowshoeing. 6 was observation tower. If anybody has any questions on what thing we might invest in first, that will probably give you a little bit of a hint. Those are the things that people want to come and recreate here and enjoy as part of that property. And those are things that are super dear to us. And then just things about how likely they would come back to utilize it. This is currently how we're assessing the property. We've broken it into 3 sections. A section on the far east that has what we consider more of those outdoor recreation and supporting enterprises, if you will, more of the commercial things that can happen, whether it might be a hotel or camping cabins, or it's a coffee shop, or it's a live tap room, or it's things like that. Those are the things that happen in that area, just as if before when there are people visiting 200 plus rooms happening in there. In the middle, this is the section that we're working currently with Landmark on, which I'm going to introduce Erica here in a second. And that's a process that we're undertaking in the moment of how do we start to put that into conservancy to make sure that not only, again, does it ensure that it's there from a recreation standpoint, but also all the ecological benefits that come along with it. And then this third part on the far western side that we're still working on, whether we end up turning it into more conservancy, whether we end up selling it to use those funds to invest back on the other side in terms of ski trails, snowmaking, and those things. So that's part of the process that we're working on right now with a decision to be made by May 15th. So I'm going to think if this is Erica, or you, are you okay at this point in time? You're on. So I'm going to bring up Erica at this point in time to talk a little bit about Landmark and we've signed an MOU with them on the opportunities that we're looking forward to as part of the Conservancy. It's still early in the process and we're excited about a lot of things that are going to happen, but she's going to speak to it far better than I will. And so I'm going to have you come on up and stand on the blue X, because that way then everybody also gets to see you.
I've not ever, this is live, okay. So I have not done this before live, so this is a little bit new for me. Hi, my name's Erica Lang. Thanks for having me here tonight. I'm with Landmark Conservancy. I'm on the conservation staff there. Okay. We have our main office is in Menominee, and then I'm based in the Bayfield office. So I just wanted to come tonight. Ben asked me to come tonight to give a little bit of information about Landmark Conservancy, who we are and how we're involved in this project. So we are a nationally accredited nonprofit land trust. Our mission is quite simple. We conserve Wisconsin's natural legacy for everyone forever. We have a 30-year history. We were born of a merger, many of you probably know, with West Wisconsin Land Trust and Bayfield Regional Conservancy coming together a number of years ago. And most recently, as of this year, Coudray Waters Regional Land Trust has also joined us. We cover 20 counties in the state of Wisconsin. And what else can I tell you about us? Our mission really is to protect land with strong natural resource values. So we don't protect all lands. They really have to have those strong natural resource values for us to get involved. We do our work primarily in two ways, and this is one reason Ben asked me to kind of explain what a conservancy is. Primarily, we use conservation easements with private landowners. And this is a voluntary legal agreement that people enter into with us. It's recorded with the title of the land. It's forever. It's forever protection. And we talk about forever, think really truly forever. 300, 500. It's a forever way to protect land. It limits the uses of the land, particularly related to development. And landowners still retain many of their rights, the right to own their property, the right to manage their property, the right to sell their property, the right to pass their property on to their heirs. And then on the other end of the spectrum, Landmark occasionally purchases land. These lands have to be pretty special. There has to be community support to do this, and we can't do it without the support of community partners, grants a lot of times, and private individuals. So that's the two ways that we do our work primarily. So Landmark began working with, I call it the Birkie folks, AVSF, last summer to start thinking about putting a conservation easement on part of the Telemark property. We're still not quite sure how much of the property will have a conservation easement on it, and that's something that we are still working on. That conservation easement then will protect the land forever by outlining the restrictions and the uses that will happen on that land into perpetuity. In this case, those allowable uses are going to look like some trail development, minimal structures like warming sheds. Again, the purpose of a conservation easement is to limit development. So we don't want too many structures and things out there in the environment. Maybe being able to practice sustainable forest management, removing invasive plants, improving wildlife habitat. So kind of think along those uses and restrictions. Leaving the land, of course, we believe as a conservation organization is going to have, leaving it in its natural forest state will have a lot of benefits. And I know some other folks in the audience are going to speak to this tonight. First and foremost, it's going to protect the watershed of the Namakagon River and the St. Croix River. This is going to place a lot less stress on water resources, including groundwater and surface water resources, which we're pretty in tune to right now, especially as our climate changes. Wildlife is also going to benefit because they're going to have connectivity of land, connectivity of forested land, because they're still going to have a functioning, unfragmented forest. And then further, people are going to be able to recreate on these lands and connect to nature, and while having a minimal impact on the land. And of course, the conserved land would provide a scenic woodland corridor to those folks who are using the trail system as well. So while we're really excited to work with ABSF to protect the middle part of the property thus far, as what Ben had put on the map, we believe that as much of the Telemark property should be conserved and protected as possible. And of course, that fits in with our conservation mission. This includes our preference to see protection on the western 190 acres that you'll hear more about tonight. We know different options are being considered for those lands. And on behalf of conservation, we're really interested in seeing that protected. So Landmark is interested in purchasing these 190 acres for conservation, and we hope that ABSF will consider that proposal in May. To achieve this, we are very aware we're going to need community support and donations to meet a price that ABSF will be accepting. And in closing, we're just really excited to work with the foundation to leave as strong of a conservation legacy for this community and this region as possible. And if you're interested in working with us to protect that land, I'll be here after the meeting, and just come see me and ask any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. All right. I'm not neither that eloquent, but thank you. So we're going to keep trying. Okay. So now I want to focus more on the eastern side. We've been working with a company called LHB. They're a land development group that helps design, and both an architect and land use from an outdoor recreation standpoint. Have done a lot of work in a lot of recreation sites, Theodore Wirth, things like Boy Scout camps, YMCAs, and a variety of other things. Are really conservation is very important to them. One of the things that actually is just come out that we've been working on is the possibility of actually offsetting all of our power use with solar. Jim has been working really hard with Dairyland Co-op, and there is an opportunity that we might be able to actually install a solar array as part of this development that would actually offset all of our energy use, including all of our snowmaking. And so this is something that is, as we've started to look at how this develops and what might be the uses from an energy standpoint into the future, something that is certainly important to us. But as you can see here, and we can come back and look at any of the pictures you want specifically later, and understand these are pretty conceptual. You know, don't look at this and say, oh man, they're going to have a playground right there and a pool right there. Oh man, these are somewhat conceptual, again, of ideas of things that we're hoping for in time, as well as partners that have come to us and said, man, we'd love to put a community pool in. That would be fantastic. Where could we do it? How would it work? Who's going to do it? So these are the ideas that are just now coming to fruition as we start to develop some of these pieces. But these are a lot of the activities that we want to start to see there. Mountain biking, sustainable parking lots that can actually not just have one big, huge area of runoff, picnic areas, hiking, playgrounds of sorts, and festival grounds of sorts. When we talk about that, things like a cool place that you can hang out. Maybe we could have a little live music on a Friday night. You could get a place to eat your lunch, some sort of community gathering building, outdoor spaces, solar. These are the things that we think are important as a centerpiece of that part of Telemark. Now, again, what you don't see up here on top is where we are right now. That's the other part that's super important to us as part of this investment, which is also all of the events, as we started to mention before, that we counted at current, nearly 55,000 people go through this venue already. So you realize it really is a draw, and it's important that we continue to evolve all of this infrastructure in concert to make sure that as people launch themselves down to Hayward, and they're going to end up down there, that they enjoy these different pieces. Again, a conceptual rendering of what a Nordic center of sorts could look like. This is interesting architecturally. I don't know if anybody remembers some of the old chalet that actually had this, not the one from Telemark, but go back to the earlier one that had this additional and with this wing. That's where that architectural piece came from. We've talked about some of the building standards that this would be. Whether it's LEED or green building, there's a variety of ways that we could go about it, but making sure that it's at the forefront of building standards to make sure that it's from an energy standpoint. And this is a big part of it as well, figuring out how do we rebuild the fireplace. We're going to utilize all those stones. They're going to be saved, and there's going to be a way to rebuild it in some sort of outdoor plaza. As we talked about, sort of this celebration type plaza area. Perhaps, again, reusing some of the inside beams to create a picnic shelter, coupled with this or rebuild of the fireplace could be a really amazing sort of, I talk about it as being sort of the wise plaza, if you will, a place that you can hang out and like I said, watch some skiers go by and whatnot. But these are the type of things that are really important to us on that part of the property. But then it leads to these sorts of other activities. So we talk about events as being something that's core to us, but we also have the other parts that are central to us in our mission, which is being good stewards of trails and also making sure that we provide outdoor active lifestyles for anybody, people of all ages, all abilities to get outside and have fun and live an active, healthy lifestyle. And again, doesn't matter if you're going for a hike, mountain bike, take your dog for a walk, or just go out and do some bird watching. Any of those things can be hopefully utilized as part of this property in the future. So with that, our goal is changing lives through outdoor experiences. And I think at this point in time, what I'm going to do is see if anybody has any specific questions. Dennis. Yeah, so that. Oh, got okay. Sorry. The question was: is there a plan to build some sort of biathlon range? Yeah. So there is a group that is working through sort of this whole variety of activities, and there's two things that are not in that initial plan that we're strongly considering, and one is a roller ski loop, and the other one is a biathlon range. And the roller ski loop likely be part of actually the snowmaking loop over here where we do our snowmaking. It allows for some really good terrain for us to try and put on camps in the summers as well as people to come train. But then also biathlon. And then the hard part about biathlon, as some of you may know, is obviously creating a 50-meter shooting range. We have the opportunity here with the gun club, but it's just too far away to actually do competitions. So we have two spots that have been identified. One is actually our parking area back here because it's adjacent our stadiums, and the other one has actually created it up closer to where the old lodge is. How's that one? You have sound back? Yeah, you can put some new batteries in it. There's some batteries back there. Sorry, more battery problems. No, down. But yeah, I think we actually, on this group that are looking at the activities, one of the members, Bill Brown, whose son is actually on the U.S. biathlon team, is helping head that up. And I think there's a strong likelihood of that being in for that very reason. That I think Jim and I have been involved in a biathlon group up here with youth and helping and working with Scope, that many of you might know Scope, for youth biathlon activities. And it brought in an entirely different group of kids that were interested in it. But it's really hard to do without the facilities by the time you set up a range and you get the kids. So having facilities that you can bring kids to is really a huge advantage. So really good question, good point. Another question. The question was, are the tennis courts staying? That is still to be determined, actually. We've looked at probably not saving all of them. They're in really rough shape, but possibly turning maybe one of them into a pickleball court, maybe one of them into a couple basketball courts. But there's at the current demolition, they're not taking them out. So that's something that we will be, again, brainstorming ideas on absolutely what we can do with them. Question was, is there a reason the downhill equipment is staying? Yeah, I mean, I think there's the ideas of actually being able to utilize some of that is in kind of in the forefront of our mind, and maybe not in the same way you're thinking, but some of it we're thinking about actually turning into either possibly some exercise stations or some unique hiking trail components. Perhaps part of it is an observation tower. So trying to utilize actually some of the old infrastructure to try and tie it back to what's happening now is in there. We have certainly looked at what would it take to do some tubing and sledding in the old little part where the rope tow is. That's an easy first step into those things. We have talked and looked into, actually it's about $1.2 million to put in a chairlift. So we've done a little bit of research into that. Had there ever been, or we decided to make a push into that, or somebody comes and says, hey, we want to run some snowboarding here, or those sorts of things, I think that opportunity could certainly exist. Unfortunately, when we did bring in the group to look at the chairlifts, reutilizing the chairlifts in the same way they were utilized before from a safety and liability standpoint just is no longer feasible, unfortunately. So, but that infrastructure will be there for now. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Sure. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the one that's on there now, I think when we think of, oh yeah, sorry. The question was about camping at the Telemark property there on the map. There was shown a campground area. The concept is for that to do sort of camping cabins. So created, sort of hillside opportunities for people to come in and stay in little cabins, which are really popular in outdoor destinations. So that's the concept. And we have talked to a couple possible people that would come in and do that. So in other words, the ABSF, when we would be partnering with somebody. And the idea of, again, all of us, I think in this room, many of us that have gone to outdoor recreation places, those are some of the amenities that are sought out. And that's the concept around it. Not so much, a big RV park or that sort of thing as it is camping cabin pieces. And the exact, depending on, again, conceptually, that's where it is along the hillside. Whether it ended up being exactly there or not, then the exact access would be determined from there. Does that make sense? Okay. Yep. Go ahead. I'm sorry, say that one more time. Yep. Yeah, it could be. It certainly could be. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, as we look at all those different pieces, oh, sorry. The question was, could the west side part of the property that we looked at selling be utilized for a camping area? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think as we look at all those different pieces of property, if we do end up selling it to a developer that's going to put in 20 homes, for instance, or something like that, then obviously it would be up to them to determine what happens in that property. But understanding as we look at that property that currently doesn't have any ski trails in it, we are looking at utilizing the equity in that property to invest in the parts that are core to us. And so that's how we're assessing what will end up happening with that west side. So, yeah. Yeah. Yes. And Erica could probably speak better to it than I, but yes, I apologize. The question was, is the land that's put in the conservancy still taxable to the town? Yes, the land is still we pay property taxes. We will still own it, and we will still pay property taxes on it. Yep. Somebody else. The question was, will the facilities that are created be accessible by the local community, sort of fees and those sorts of things? Yeah, I mean, I think the goal is for us from a facilities standpoint to really, I think if you think of, have you been to 00? So in Sealy, we have there's a property there that's owned by Sawyer County. We have a Nordic Center on it. There's a little strength room. What else is it? Place to wax skis, fix your bike. There's a little kitchen in it that the coffee shop uses, so sort of that sort of facility. So that's a facility that's open to the public. People come in, they utilize it. Now, if there's other things, now let's say an entity comes in and builds a community pool, I'm sure there would be obviously a fee to utilize that. Ski trails, likely there'll be some sort of ski pass involved, like there is in the Birkie Trail. It's about $50 a year. Somehow that'll get worked in. I think we're kind of working on how the details of that will be, but not 100% sure on that exactly. But I think the whole goal is absolutely to make sure that the local community can utilize the property as much as the people that are coming to visit. We want to be able to use it. If there's a majority of people here on the weekends, we want to make sure that we get to use it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday as well. So yeah. Do you have some? The question, do I have to still say it in a second? The question was there any effect on the golf course? At this time, no, we do not have any working relationship, so to speak. I don't know how you want to put that with the golf course. They are working on the golf courses for sale. And for a while they were under contract, I think, with some folks, but I don't know exactly at this point, but yeah, at this point, the golf course is closed and it's for sale. And that's honestly the most I know. The question was, what was the demolition cost and what is the ABSF responsible for? The demolition costs were $760 or $770,000. And the ABSF is responsible for all of it. We did get a idle site grant with the community, with cable. We had to apply through the town. We did that together. And so $250,000 will be coming back from the state as part of what's called an idle site grant. And then the remainder we have to raise and to pay for the demolition.
Okay, how much does the ABSF want for the western side that the landmark and the difference in cost if it's sold to the
No, great. The question was, what is the cost of the western property, and is there a different price for if it's sold to a developer versus the landmark? At this point, from our organization standpoint, think of it almost like an auction. We're taking bids. We haven't set a price on it that said, hey, it's $580,000. We're asking interested parties to inquire with us. Again, the goal is, from our standpoint, we don't want to be everything to everybody. We know that we can't do that. Our goal is to be pretty focused on our mission. We're really good at getting people active outside. We're really good at putting on events and being trail stewards. So that part of the property, which is not central and core to our mission, there's a possibility that we can work with Landmark and that gets purchased into more conservancy. There's a chance that it could get turned into 25 homes that somebody builds. So there's a variety of opportunities there. We're accepting all offers up through May 15th, at which time the board will decide on what is the best fit and allows us to utilize those funds to back to removing that building and investing in the core infrastructure pieces of what we do, which is skiing and the events.
What's the latest on hotel and lodging?
The question was, what is the latest on hotel and lodging development? I don't have a lot of information on that. We have talked to probably 3 groups, I suppose, 2 groups that have been interested in hotels in some way, shape, or form. One, I think, more serious. That was, and both of them were from 40 to 80 rooms, a little bit more on the sustainable side. How serious they are, it's hard to tell until you actually get to the point of what we've said all along is we have to buy this property. We got to remove that building, and then we can start looking at moving forward. So we're almost to that point where we can now start really seriously looking at those different opportunities and people that are interested, making sure they're legitimate and what they want to do and are able to do and fits close with what we want and hope out of that property. Yeah. Yep. Twofold. One is it's actually, we've been working towards this for quite some time in terms of utilizing the equity from that piece of property as part of our original plan. And 2, we're going to use a majority of that funding for the building. We just mentioned that $500,000, $600,000 bill that's going to be due over here. And that was really part of our original plan. So again, whether it gets sold to somebody to put in sustainable housing, there's benefits, of course, on both sides of this. Could be great for housing for cable. Could certainly, we talked about the tax base before. Obviously would certainly elevate the tax base for the town. On the flip side, of course, there's a bunch of ecological opportunities to keep it into conservancy. So I think, again, from our organization standpoint, we want to make sure that we come back and focus on what we're really good at and not get too much of a mission drift on the other parts of the property. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it's, again, we probably talked to nearly a dozen different, oh, sorry. The question was, State Jackson. Oh, yeah. Yep. Yep. What kind of development companies are interested in that property? Because there's others that are not, there's other subdivisions in the area that have land that are not being currently, people aren't purchasing those lots. I think it's the developers that are most interested are people that have seen success along outdoor corridors of recreation. So in other words, you look at Hatchery Creek, Mosquito Brook, Nordic Ridge, the Sealy Highlands, Sealy Pines, Nordic, those are the type of developments that I think have been seen by other developers as successful because they're at one adjacent to outdoor recreation, like the ski trails, the mountain bike trails. So I think that's the type of interest or people that think could be successful there. And I think it also has the added benefit that it's super close to cable, that it's a mile walk into town and those sorts of things. Yep. Short term, the question was there's a corridor property between Nordmore about connecting the trails on both sides. The long term would be yes, actually. There's a really, possibly, I mean, dreaming, right? We looked at it with the trail designer from US Ski and Snowboard, and it's elevation wise, there works really great to put a culvert under the road that you could actually ski underneath it and be able to then connect the trails. Obviously, it's a pretty significant amount of money, and I don't think it's super high on the list right now, but it's the topography is set up perfectly to do it right there, actually. And it would really be cool, of course, to be able to connect not just skiing in the winter, but hiking and walking and all sorts of things. But I think that one might be a little bit farther down the road, but it is certainly, it could be done there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think there's no doubt that there's likely going to be change, of course, there as this turns back into what it was maybe 25 years ago when the lodge was full and there was thousands of people there. Now, I'm not saying overnight there's going to be thousands of people here suddenly, but I think as we put more outdoor recreation opportunities in this piece of property, certainly there will be more people here. There's no doubt about it. I think that's true. Yeah. Yeah, when we look back, the question was 55,000 people in a year. It was actually 2 years ago. We looked through and went through all the different events as well as the amount of different trail passes throughout the year, and that's a whole year. So that would include Schwamigan riders, people utilizing Canva trails, anything that might have gone through this piece of property. That's how we got to that number. When maybe I think that was really I mean, we were trying to extrapolate into everybody because when you make again, whether there's an additional amount on top of there, we're not counting if my wife and I came riding and I went riding and she didn't, that sort of thing. No, of course not. That we were just trying to utilize how many trail users were there throughout between mountain biking in the summer, hiking, skiing, any sort of outdoor use, then on top of also the events. Yeah. Any more?
As you focus more of your research.
The question was, as we focus our energies on Telemark, what are the assurances that the Birkie Trail is groomed? Actually, from our standpoint, certainly we're putting a lot of energy here, but we're actually investing nearly as much in terms of a grooming standpoint on the southern end of the trail. We actually got a grant this year to purchase an extra groomer. It's sitting actually right behind you. And our goal is to station that at just south of Hatchery Creek. We own a piece of property in Duffy Field, and we're working the goal of that grant, as well as the development at Duffy, is to actually really make it easier for us to groom from Duffy Field all the way up to Mosquito Brook, because otherwise it's a really deadhead end for us. So even though we are putting a lot of energy here, we're actually putting a significant amount of energy as well into the winter grooming from the southern half of the trail. The other big part of that is we actually, as we're moving into our capital campaign, our capital budget, we included purchasing a used excavator. And the reason we did that was, a big reason was trail repair. When we rent it, we're really limited on time on when we can be out in the forest because of oak wilt and the like. And so by being able to go down that road, it gives us flexibility to actually spend more time trying to do a bunch of that trail repair in shorter periods. So we're talking a lot, of course, right now tonight about Telemark and being up here, but there's no doubt that we realize some of the most important part of the trail is the southern half of the trail, because if the Birkie can't get to Hayward, that's not a success, of course. People want to be able to start in Cable, ski into Hayward, enjoy the main street. That's core to us as well. So we really realize that certainly making the southern half of the trail sustainable is really important. So we certainly have not forgotten about that and are putting financial resources towards that as well. I'm sorry, say that one again. Oh. The question was, do we see residential development as a building block to sustainable Telemark? I wouldn't say that sustainable housing is critical to our success at the property, but I think there's no doubt if it ends up being that there is a recreational development community that's put in that piece of property, can it enhance his property? Possibly. Certainly there's a chance that those are skiers and bikers, to your point, Jack. The people likely that are buying those or renting those are skiers and bikers that are using these trails. Certainly that means they're out utilizing the property, hopefully going downtown, going to Rondo's, getting pizzas, buying coffee, whatever those pizzas are. So I think that certainly does bring an influx into the community, certainly helps raise that part of the tax base. But whether that makes this over here completely successful or not, I wouldn't say that's essential. No. Yeah. The question was, is there any plans for worker housing? From our standpoint specifically, no, but I think we've actually talked to a couple people that have a real interest in that, and especially workers in terms of summer help or trail workers or, just general building in the area, having housing. So I think it would be awesome if there was somebody that was willing or interested in that sort of thing. Again, I think all of us are only needing more employees and to have opportunities for people to stay, again, if they're up here working, if it's athletes working in the summer or it's just people working year round, I think that would be great, but it's certainly unfortunate. It's not something that we're going to be developing ourselves. Frank, you had a question? Yeah.
I keep going back to that 190-acre parcel that's closed in some circles for private development. Demolition costs $750,000. 1/3 of that is covered. Grant means you have to come up $500,000 to where's that money coming from? And I keep getting a sneaky suspicion that the equity in that 190 acres is involved. Is that correct?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Correct. Absolutely.
Oh. It's tiny, but we've got to make a decision right away within a month on that property.
And it's not actually a crisis. We've actually been planning this for a while. This has been, when we look back and, I don't want to dive into our business plan tonight. That's by no means the reason for this meeting. But certainly, yes, the plan is to utilize the equity of that property, as I mentioned earlier, as part of investing in this part of the property. So, yeah. Yep. Sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We were just talking about the western edge of the Telemark property, and again, I think when we look at this property, it's a vast property that's been here for a long time, and if people were interested in buying it to preserve it, they had 8 years to do it. And I think that's absolutely the case. And I think now, from our organization standpoint, our goal is we're going to turn it into a recreational property like it was originally designed. And are there going to be different parts that could be different? That is possibly true. You're correct. But on the flip side, I also think that as we look at whether it ends up being developed for housing, or it ends up being part of Landmark, or it ends up being a campground or something else, that we still don't know yet. But I think there is no doubt that that piece of property will end up likely being utilized as we invest that equity back over here. So, yeah. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Basically, this 190 acres, really kind
scatter shot all over the map in terms of, you know, how it would be shown, how it would ultimately be utilized. And each of those points has drastically different implications for the community, for the Birkie, local homeowners, property owners, etc. So with that, if it's ultimately to be sold to a developer, what types of restrictions or requirements would be placed on that developer so that some level of sustainability
Mhm.
and, you know, kind of environmental
Yep. Sure.
maintained to the property and will, in terms of population density?
Yep.
And any environmental impacts, what are the requirements to be placed on any developer?
Okay, then this will be the last question on the 190 because I think we've covered that fully tonight. They were just asking about the density of the property on the west. We've talked about a variety of things. There's the possibility of selling it as 540s, so that it could not be subdivided. So it could be really large parcels of property. We've talked about could be reduced to 10-acre minimums, so that could be closer to 20 homes. But certainly the ABSF as an organization, if we do end up entertaining that it is going to go to housing as opposed to something like Landmark, certainly imposing restrictions upon it that would ensure that it is a sustainable. Even or there is other possibilities of doing cluster housing, that it could be maybe 2 small clusters such that maybe 180 of it ends up being completely left untouched, but that there's 2 smaller clusters of houses. So I think there's no doubt that we're looking at making sure that it is does have a series of restrictions on it. So, Gary.
So, historically in this property, I mean, if you look at the history of this, some areas of when the pipeline property out of Tony's bankruptcy developed the 9 years, then actually, other than the wonderful condos that were built that are still operating, ups and downs they've had, but he did like a huge high-end hack job on he then he bought very the high-end hack job. Nobody would do anything about for that, and he did that just to cash out. That's another place. Anybody could have come in and bought this property. There's a couple of opportunities. Backed up this 1,000 acres. Lots all held with it. I congratulate the Birkie people step to buy the property. Have a plan. It's not going to keep everybody happy, but could have been terrible.
Yeah. Thanks.
You know.
Yep. All right. Thanks. Jack. Yep.
What you're saying here is that you brought Telemark from, you did not have to buy that.
No, we did.
From my understanding, they all,
Yeah, that was. We actually talked about that as an organization. We laughed about it. We said we would have loved to be able to buy just the 500 on this side of power lines. We would have done it in a second, but that was not an option for us. It was either buy it all or nothing. So we had to buy it all. Correct.
Yeah, part of that equation was the building.
Yeah.
I mean, they weren't gonna carve it up.
Is there any more? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. So we have made it through the hour that we were shooting for. Christy said we got a majority of the questions. If there's any ones that are unique that we haven't gotten to, we'll get to them and email them back to you directly and send those back to you. Certainly reach out to the organization, email us. And likewise, you guys can stay here and we can answer questions for you. You guys will be back in touch and certainly reach out and let us know if you have any questions. But thanks for joining us tonight. And that's what I know. So, thanks.